So before I get started, how about just like a show of hands? Who in this room knows exactly what they want to do? Okay, cool. How many of you have like a vague idea about what you want to do? Cool. And then how many of you are confused and have no idea what to do? Awesome. Yeah, so all three options are very, very valid. Like no option is better than the other, I can tell you that right now. I've been like at a different, like all the different options, I've like gone through everything, so like I know. So first, let me do like a little bit of an introduction about like where I'm currently at and how so then I'll move on to how I got here and like the kinds of plans that I made on the way, what worked, what didn't work, and then what I learned through the whole process. I graduated last year from Brown University with a double degree in economics and environmental studies. My primary interests right now are international development and developing countries. And so more so specifically, all of the issues that lie at the intersection of environmental conservation and economic development, that's what I'm interested in. In the past, a lot of my focus has been on renewable energy. And so a lot of this interest is a result of many courses I took at Brown, but like more specific, like this one course I took at Brown, I think my sophomore year, was titled Environmental Issues in Development Economics. And so that's sort of something that really, really inspired me to go down this path. Recently, I've become really interested in sustainable finance and sustainable investing. I'm really, really interested in sustainable consumption and also like incentives to sustainable consumption. So what the government or what policies can be put into place to incentivize people to choose more sustainably. I'm also interested in what corporations are doing because I know a lot of the times we put a lot of pressure and emphasis on what individual people are doing, but in reality, a lot of the waste that's being dumped into our environment is a result of all of these corporations. So I'm really interested in what they're doing to offset their carbon footprint. And so, oh yeah, and I'm also interested in technological solutions to climate change. So what I really wanted to do after graduation was just to have a year to myself to decide what kind of path I wanted to take, because as you can see, like this is a lot of interest. And I was confused about where to start, where I wanted to end up going. So I decided I wanted a year at least to myself just to explore different options and to do whatever, just to like figure myself out. And so I currently work and volunteer as an alumni interviewer for Brown University. And a lot of that is because I loved college and I'm always wanting to meet people that want to go to Brown. And I not only want to see what they're all about, but I also want to become a resource to them and find people with similar backgrounds to my own. And just like I still keep in touch with all of the kids that I've interviewed for Brown. So like that's been really great. I also work on freelance projects. The most recent one I worked on was this one hotel that wanted to set up their brand identity, but they also wanted to have a bunch of sustainability initiatives in place. So like I worked with their team to figure out what they could do to be more sustainable. And then I also helped them set up their logo, their website, and their social media. And I do this. So I'm like the project coordinator for the Stone Soup Leadership Institute, and Marianne just wanted me to give you guys like a brief background into what I do. So I do weekly meetings with Leah and Leslie in Providence. What we do is we work on the curriculum, we work on the Institute's annual program that can be like Job Saturday, mentors, college prep. We recently got into time management and budget too, right? Yeah. I go to conferences and events and just try to scope out partnerships or like great initiatives that we can partner with. I also work a lot to develop and improve our existing websites. So Sustainability is Fun is something that we worked on during our last summit, and that's something that I've been working to get up and running. Cool, so my current dreams are connected to my dreams for the world and my community. So all of you guys know that I'm from Bhutan, and Bhutan is in like a very interesting place right now where we're trying to develop, but we're also trying to conserve our environment and make sure that we don't lose our cultural identity in the process of development. And so the government has been very, very supportive of this, and they're just trying to do as much as they can to make sure that we're holding on to our environment, our culture, but also being able to develop. And so my dream for my life professionally is to be able to bridge that gap between environmental conservation and economic development. That's why I went to Brown and designed my entire education at Brown around those two topics. Yeah, and so my dream for my community is for it to be able to succeed in its goal of developing while protecting its cultural integrity and environmental integrity. So 5 years ago, what was my plan? I had just graduated from a high school in Hong Kong. I actually just wanted to also put that up there because I know a lot of you are going into high school, and this movement is actually a really, really good resource for so many students around the world. I think there's currently 17 UWC schools. So what UWC is a global education movement with the mission to make education a force to unite people, nations, cultures for peace and a sustainable future. And so there's 17 colleges around the world. They provide some sort of aid to every student that comes there. And I think there's like 180 countries represented currently at all of these UWC colleges. Yeah, so I know a lot of you are going into high school or are currently in high school, and this is a really good resource because it's the last 2 years of high school, and what they do is they just try to get as many different cultures represented as possible. And so all of the students are backed by this foundation called the Davis Foundation. And so if you apply to college in the US, they have a select list of college. If you apply there, if you get in there, this foundation funds your education. So when I went to Brown, because that was on the list of colleges that they fund, I got a $20,000 scholarship each year that I was at Brown from this foundation. And they do this for every single UWC student that there is. Yeah, so I graduated from that high school. If you guys want to talk more about it, just let me know. I'm all for people applying and going to it. It's a great experience. So I was heading off to college. I knew I wanted to do neuroscience, but I wasn't completely set. So I was in that very vague idea about what I want to do kind of situation. And so in the summer, I was volunteering at different organizations, but my two favorite were the Vocational Training School for Youth Living with Disabilities, and this was in Bhutan. That's actually how I realized that the youth that had a lot of disabilities, they weren't very well supported by the government, and they didn't have a lot of facilities to fall back on. And so that's something that got me really interested in accessibility and thinking about how we can make our facilities as well as all of our resources more accessible to people that need it. And then I was also working with the Youth Development Fund, and that was just really fun because it was sort of like a summit, but not really. And I was just talking to a lot of high schoolers who were figuring out their lives or who had already figured out their lives. So I learned a lot from them either way. Okay, yeah, so my goal in 2014 was to do neuroscience, get into med school, but I knew I wanted to double major. So my experience with all of the organizations that I was volunteering with made me realize that I want to learn so much more about different topics and different issues. And so I knew that I definitely wanted to make the most of my education and double major. And so my 5-year plan sort of looked like this column right here. It was just 4 credits each semester, 2 neuro requirements, 2 different courses each semester, and then at the summer I was going to intern at a hospital in Bhutan. And I thought that was what all of my 4 years at Brown was going to look like. And so I actually did do that for the first year. I did 2 neuro requirements each year. And in the summer when I went back, my internship with the hospital fell through. But what I ended up doing was I ended up interning with WWF in Bhutan. And so what I did with them was a lot of focus around bird conservation. And so we set up a bird watching club after school program for all of those students in Bhutan. And so just working there, I learned a lot. And so I really then decided, started thinking about the environment as something that I wanted to be involved in. And so when I went back to Brown, I was like, I'm not really sure I feel neuro anymore. I was like, I still really am interested in it, but I didn't know whether I wanted to go to med school because I wanted to go to it or because if I thought that was what my parents wanted for me. They'd never explicitly told me to go to med school, but I thought that was what they wanted for me. And so I sat down, thought really hard, and ended up declaring environmental studies as my major. And so I completely scrapped neuro. And so the year after that, I interned with the Department of Renewable Energy in Bhutan. That's under the Ministry for Economic Affairs. And so the reason I did this was because through my internship with WWF, I noticed that a lot of the conversation around bird conservation was about like hydropower plants and how they're harming birds. And so when I think about hydropower or renewable energy, I really think about the positives, and everyone does too. 99.8 something % of electricity in Bhutan is funded by hydropower. So we have a lot of power plants all around the country. And so I really wanted to see the more economic argument for it. So I did an internship with them. We did research into diversifying energy sources. And then I just sort of really got to see the two different conversations that were happening. And I noticed a lack of the environmental argument when people were talking about economic development. So there was a lack of the environmental presence there. And then when I went back to talk with all of the environmental activists and the conservation experts, there was definitely a lack of economic knowledge there. And so I really, really wanted to bridge that gap. So I went back to Brown, declared economics as my second major. And so then I had to start thinking about what I wanted after graduation. And I knew I wanted to go to grad school. I didn't know what I wanted to go to grad school for, but I knew I wanted to do it. And so this year has really been me trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. I know I want to do international development with a focus on sustainable policy. And so, yeah, that's my goal now. And my next steps are going to be taking the GRE. I'm going to be studying for it for 3 months in the summer, and then I'll be taking it sometime in September. I've been reconnecting with my old professors to get recommendation letters from them, as well as get connections from them to just be connected to better resources. I've also been connecting to alumni at my schools of choice. So I'm really interested right now in the International Development Program at Fletcher, and I know a couple of people that graduated from Brown and went into that program. So I'm actually Skyping them next week just to talk to them, get what their experiences were, and just ask for advice. So 2 major lessons I learned was, first, it's okay to be confused. I think a lot of us are expected to make decisions about our lives at a really young age. I know I was 18, 17, out of high school. I was confused for a really long time. But what I found is important was that it's important to explore. So when I got to Brown and I was confused and I didn't want to do neuro anymore, I really, really started exploring different courses. And so at graduation, I had taken courses at 15 different departments in Brown. And so that's a lot. Even for Brown, that's a lot. Yeah, so I met a lot of different professors, a lot of different students. I got a lot of different ideas and perspectives. And so now whenever I read something, I think about oh, this class that I took would talk about environmental impacts, but this class would be more historical in what they were talking about. So I have all of these different perspectives to fall back on. And it's just been really, really great. So it's really important that you have a plan, but it's also very important that you're flexible in your plan and you're willing to explore as much as you can. So, okay, this is my last thing, but why is it important to have a plan? So first, you identify what you already know that you want to do. So you identify your goals, the resources you have, and this also lets you identify what you don't know about yourself, right? So I thought I knew I wanted to do neuro, but in forming a plan, I decided that's not really what I wanted. This was my goal instead. It really acts as a roadmap to get you to your destination. So identifying your goal, that's your destination, and having a plan, that's your roadmap to your destination. And so more often than not, almost always, your plan isn't a set plan. You're gonna have other paths that pop up, and you're gonna probably do something completely different than you had planned. But what it does is it gives you control. It gives you control over how you live your life. It gives you control over the decisions that you make. And I think that's a really, really important thing when you're thinking about your goals and dreams.